here to have a conversation basically on Africa and educating our next generation of leaders. We've heard the opening remarks, Morris's talk earlier on. But something that is interesting we need to put in perspective is some statistics. So we've been told in the last couple of years, by 2050, that we will have 2 billion young people in Africa, 2 billion. And by 2030, with the way things are going, only 1 out of every 10 youths will have access to higher education. That's a big deal. That's a time bomb waiting to happen. And this 1 in 10 people that will be having access to education, we can't even guarantee that it's quality education. So a lot of problems that we've seen is actually as a result of deficits in access to quality education. I'm very happy to moderate in this panel. We have people that are going to do great justice to this conversation. So I'll start by asking Anne, because I'm a gender advocate, and she's dressed very nicely. Anne is an African working for a global brand. And where I come from in Nigeria, we're almost 200 million. Most Nigerians, in fact, all Nigerians would love to work for a global brand, but that isn't the case. So in most instances, we still find out that lots of expatriates come and take the jobs that we feel that Nigerian youths can take. What do you think prepared you for the leadership role you currently occupy at General Electric, education-wise? Because I do know that you had your first degree here on the continent and your second degree in the West. So did anything growing up within your education prepare you for that?
So just by way of introduction, in terms of what I do at General Electric, I do procurement. So I sit in the supply chain, providing procurement channels and strategies for all our sectors. So we are in healthcare, transportation, oil and gas, and so on. So it's a leadership role taking care of the Middle East, Turkey, and Africa. I sit here in Nairobi. Quite an interesting role because very, very diverse. And in terms of my education, Nneka, I did have a background in the private and public education. So Professor Chacha, I'm very exposed in terms of both areas of the education system here in Kenya. And in addition to that, I also had the privilege to also go to an American university here and also in the US. So that really prepared me to manage a diverse team from all over the world. I did go to the Kenya High School, which is an all-girls boarding school that has girls from all over the country, meaning if you only are born and bred in Nairobi, you've never met someone from Kisumu or Lodwar, Kenya High School is going to expose you to that. And because of that, you're able to open up your mind to understanding people, accepting them for where they come from, and appreciating their culture. And in GE, that's what we stand for. We represent a brand that is in 180 countries across the world. And because of that, we need to understand how to operate in those countries successfully.
All right, thank you very much. And talking about education, I'd like to throw the next question at Vivian. We see a lot of our African youths, once they're still studying on the continent, they're okay, they're average. But why is it that, so you might not have the answer, but I think you will be able to help us out. Why is it that when African students move to the West and start to study in Western colleges, from being C students from nowhere, they suddenly get onto the dean's list, the president's list, top of the class? Why do you think that happens?
Thank you for the question. I think a large part of that question has been answered by Professor Chacha's very vivid description of the kind of challenges that students in a typical African university would face. There isn't enough infrastructure, just basic infrastructure, where you're living, where you're sleeping, where you're reading, the resources that are available to you, how many books there are per student. If you're in the sciences, the quality of laboratory that you can have or the quality of equipment that you'd have to use. But so a lot of the students you see that are average on the African continent will have gone through tremendous challenges and would have gone through very many odds to make it. In my day at the University of Nairobi, my first degree was in law. The faculty of law was very small, so it took on a student number of about 70 from the whole country. And you can imagine most people in the humanities wanted to study law, so they took 70, and you typically had to get A's to make it to that faculty. But at the end of 4 years, which is the course program, a majority of the students graduated with lower seconds after getting A's. And we always wondered why that was. After my first degree, I went to London, to the LSE and to University College. And then I was able to understand why the difference. Because if you're a student of law, you had almost 6 libraries that were available to you. If you asked for a book, the next question you have to answer is which edition? You'd have all the editions available to you. At the University of Nairobi, we probably had 5 books. It was 1 edition, and when it was out, you'd wait for 2 weeks or more to get it. So resources and the infrastructure is a problem.
And my next question is actually for Professor Hendrick. So we know that science is an approach to making sense of the world, to exploring, to engaging, and ultimately helping us to change some of the wrongs that we see in the world. However, what we see or what we have seen in the past is that the younger generation are not interested in pursuing careers in STEM.
There are plenty of reasons for that. The training of the teachers is sometimes not what it needs to be in order to introduce the topic appropriately. And that's where these partnerships come in. So there are many ways to do this. We do it by actually training teachers in different kinds of settings, bringing high school, middle school teachers onto campus, letting them experience the environment of an engineering program, interacting with faculty, with researchers, and then taking that and developing lesson plans. And these are according to state guidelines. So these are appropriate lesson plans for the age group that they're focused on. And there's a conversation back and forth between the teachers, the faculty at the university. But the real way of looking at it is that we've been able to extend our interaction by basically training the trainers. So we bring in the teachers, let them develop lesson plans, make sure they understand the context behind that. Then they bring that into the classroom. Then we take it one step further, and we have them run workshops under organization of the university, where they introduce the material again to other colleagues, high school, middle school teachers. So it extends that way.
Thank you. So I'm moving to my Nigerian brother, Femi. So Femi, so we both come from, I think, the largest nation on the continent. I'm the best, forgive me. You might not agree, but we both agree on to that. So in Nigeria, we are more than 170 million, but because we haven't done a census, some people think we're closer to 200 million. The average age is 18, so you can imagine what that is. However, less than 30% of the youths actually get into higher education every year. When I worked with the former minister under Obasanjo's administration, it was during that regime, one of the task forces, that we found out that in my country, we have roughly 1-something million youths applying into colleges every year. However, we have less than 120,000 spaces in all the higher educations put together. So currently, if we look at the universities that are registered, we don't even have more than 100, we don't even have up to 120. And now, so this is like 10 years ago, so it's probably moved from 1 million to probably 2 or 3 million youths looking for college placements every year. So there's a gap. However, those that do get in, we find out that there's some skills gap. I understand that LEAP, I know LEAP very well, and LEAP has been doing a lot. So how do you think we can better prepare the Nigerian youths for leadership positions, for the labor market. And I know that when LEAP started, the focus was on the college, looking at youths at the college level. But that changed. Why did that change?
Okay, thank you, Nneka. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Like you rightfully mentioned, our core focus in LEAP Africa is to develop the capacity of young people for personal leadership, organizational leadership, and community leadership. So when we started, we focused primarily on the university, college-age students. But one of the reasons why we moved back and went back to the high schools was demography. So you rightfully said the median age of Nigeria is 18. The bulk of Nigerians, young people, are below the age of 18. They're in the high schools. Not many of them will have the opportunity of getting into university. A good number of them, even with the way we've increased universities over the past few years, a good number of them will not be able to get into. Or those who even get into it might have like 3 years gap year, 2 years gap year. Those things are common in Nigeria. So we felt it's important to equip people early enough. And if you look at the mainstream public education, it's lacking in opportunities for social development, leadership development, economic development. It's really focused on theory, on certification. I think it was Maurice that mentioned certification. It's really focused on that. And even as at that, we're not even doing well in the certification. The WAEC, the secondary school leaving education and JAMB, you still see a lot of failure rates, high failure rates and the likes. So what we do in LEAP Africa right now is our ultimate goal is to influence policy and influence the curriculum, because there's a lot of problem with the curriculum. Our curriculum is lacking, and even extracurricular activities are lacking. So the first thing we've been doing over the years is organize programs that help expose young students in the SS1. I think that's year 10, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, year 10. To leadership. So we embark on it through a training of the trainers approach. We train the teachers, and through that we empower them with our curriculum, with our lessons, and through a whole academic year, they stay with their year 10 students and train them on leadership, life skills. The program is activity-based, is experiential in its design. So the expectation is that through their engagement, they develop problem-solving skills, critical thinking skills, and those are the things that are lacking in our curriculum. The average Nigerian curriculum doesn't train the young person to think critically about issues or to solve problems. And we're a continent that is full of problems. We had better start raising problem solvers.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm standing here on representing the youth, not only the Kenyan youth, but the African youth. The issue of youth unemployment actually is of great worry to us all, not only the stakeholders, but the youth ourselves. I look at a view or the point of how can we address, in terms of the institutions of higher learning, what can they do to help equip the youth with necessary skills that are required in the market for them to emerge or for them to be able to be accommodated in the industry.